help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. Happy summer. We are in June, which means we are in another Pride Month. And so that is today's topic. Pride Month continues to get humbled. If you have not listened to our Pride Month is Going Downhill podcast from last year, go on ahead and check that out. We released it, I believe, in July of 2023. Last year was really the pivotal year for Pride Month, wearing people out. And this year, we have seen that continue. We were hoping and predicting that would continue, both on a corporate level and on an individual level. And it's not that all those who don't identify as gay or lesbian are tired of it. The gays and lesbians are actually tired of it, and we will break all of that down for you in this great, crazy world where even Pride Month is starting to get canceled. It's amazing, and it's great. So we will cover that. Also, last week, we announced a big news that Steve Carlin and I have written a new book, the highly anticipated sequel. We got a lot of requests for this book, What to Say When 2. What to Say When 2 will come out in the fall. You can pre-order your copy directly from 40 Days for Life. You can get it on Amazon too. We encourage you to pre-order this book. The first one, What to Say When, was a number 2 Amazon bestseller. We immediately went into the second printing after a week or two of the release back in 2021. That book really shocked us at the great need. We got about a decade of requests for a book like What to Say When. But since the overturning of Roe, we have gotten many requests as abortion arguments have evolved. They've changed. They've gotten weirder. They've gotten more violent. And they've gone into areas that typically the pro-life movement didn't really go into, particularly things like the homosexual movement, the trans movement, and how abortion is so tied to those now in a post-Roe America. And so be sure to pre-order the book. If you order it directly from 40 Days for Life, you will get a signed copy, and which doesn't add any value to it, but you'll have our signature nevertheless. And also, you do not need to have read the first What to Say When to read What to Say When 2. Definitely helps, but it's not required. And so if you just want to know how to navigate Dobbs and the overturning of Roe and your uncle at Thanksgiving, this book also goes very in-depth to rape and incest, which has intimidated a lot of pro-lifers, particularly the last 2 years. The abortion movement has done a fantastic job at obliterating our arguments through sensationalizing rape. We break that down and not only give you the arguments, we give you multiple examples of rape and incest and how you can talk about that. We should not run from it when it comes up first. There are many opportunities because once somebody changes their mind on that, everything else, all other abortions, go out the door with it. And so we've seen that happen a lot. So we cover a lot in What to Say When 2. What to Say When 2 has a lot more Tabasco sauce on it than What to Say When 1. We will say that. What to Say When 1, we cover a lot of the basics, but this book is PG-13 for sure, and we encourage you to get it. You will be equipped. If you order it directly from us, it helps our mission. It helps support the mission. So we make more money if you order it from us than on Amazon, but if you want to give Amazon your money, you can do it. That helps us too. But helps us more if you order it directly from 40 Days for Life. We have different combos that you see on the screen and bulk pricing and all that good stuff. If you want to pre-order. And if you pre-order, you may get your book early. You may not. but you may get your book early. That's our little tease. So with that, we will leave the comforts of what to say when to, and we will enter into yet another Pride Month, which is in full swing. And I don't know if that's accurate. We will break that down. But somebody who's always in full swing and has no pride, but is actually celebrating Humility Month is Mr. Steve Carlin, who joins us. Steve, how are you?
Hey, glad to be here. Glad that Pride Month seems to have peaked, and maybe we can get back to Sanity Month in June.
Or just we could get back to June. June's a great month.
Yes.
What did June do wrong to have all the gays invade and like scream at everybody for 30 straight days?
In Wisconsin, where our summer is only 6 weeks long to start with, we really don't need a distraction. We don't need a theme. I agree.
So you're proud of those who identify as gay for the first 4 weeks of your summer, and then you're not proud of them.
I love how it comes right after Memorial Day. You get like 1 day for moms, 1 day for those who gave their life serving our country. In a week or so here, we'll have 1 day for dads, 30 days for sexual deviants.
Yes.
I don't think that's the exact T-shirt. I think there's still love is kind of getting lost now. It's just like a lot of screaming. But 30 days for sexual deviance. I have not seen those T-shirts. I don't encourage the viewer or the listener to Google that.
Self-print them. Get them printed on your own
Self-printing.
local business.
Heather is celebrating the month of the Sacred Heart. If
Yes.
you're Catholic,
Exactly.
so back to Jesus.
Yeah. That's red is the only color, or maroon.
You
Jesus
know,
bleeds maroon.
And for, I think the Orthodox, I know for Catholics and the Orthodox, June, we'll have some great Orthodox friends correct me, but June 29th is the huge feast day of St. Peter and St. Paul. I mean, two guys that talk about living in a pagan culture. They go to Rome. They know they're going to be killed. They do it anyways. They get killed. Peter's crucified upside down as to not want the honor of being crucified the same way as our Lord. And I think that's appropriate. I think that's really appropriate.
And just 5 days before that, John the Baptist, a great saint who defended marriage.
He lost his head then, and he would lose it now. There's no doubt
Yes.
about that. There's no doubt about that. So I think it's important to cover this, and we covered it last year because there's a couple of categories. We just cover this. Okay. There are the people who don't want to deal with the homosexual movement. Like, whatever. I don't care. I really don't care. And that's I don't care that you like it. I don't care that you don't like it. It's also, I don't care, leave me alone. Like, I don't care who you have sex with, which is how they started their movement. Like, what do you care?
Right.
And now it's like, well, we all have to care and we got to clap too. And we don't want to do that. Then there's the yawn. Like, they still do the pride. Is that why the rainbow flag is out? Like, oh, yeah. You know. And then there's what I think is becoming the spokespeople for the homosexuals, which is the fringe, who are way into this. You would think it's like the first Pride Month ever. And they're way into it, and they're crazy. And they're doing stuff that Pride Month wasn't doing 20 years ago, like getting dressed up in like leather chains, and there's like 60-year-old dudes walking down and their butts hanging out. It's disgusting. And you can see all that on Twitter. But that's like they're like speaking for them. But there's another category now, which is many homosexuals, okay? Those who basically this boils down to a sexual preference, same-sex attraction. They gave us all these different terms. So that's your identity. Your sexual desires is your identity. And we all have to accept it. We got to celebrate it. And we got to say that it's love. Those people are tired of Pride Month. Now, they helped start it because now we have generations of people who have been publicly gay, okay? Like in the 80s, it was like, oh, you don't say anything, and there were all these rumors about the volleyball scene in Top Gun and what was that in there for and all that, and it had nothing to do with the gays. But that was just a rumor. But then the 90s, it came kind of like risque and cool, and Ellen came out, and then by the 2000s, and they get Obama supporting gay marriage, and now it's like everybody's gay, who cares? Nobody cares. And I think that the people who started it are like, oh yeah, we got to go to grandma's for Christmas.
So I think it's no surprise that the Bruce Jenner phenomenon was in 2015. Like the homosexual movement essentially achieved total victory that year when the Supreme Court imposed same-sex marriage, so-called, on all 50 states. It's like, well, the revolution can't just achieve victory. The revolution always has to be perpetual. And so we went seamlessly into the trans thing, and now we're hard to believe this is the 10th year since Bruce Jenner imposed. I don't know. I guess I can't blame him entirely, but he seemed like he was kind of the figurehead of the whole trans thing.
He was. I think that it's good that it's still controversial because for us, okay, so we are Christian, and so we're against promiscuity, we're against sexual deviancy, we're against
Redefining marriage. Like sex is for a man and a woman within marriage. Okay.
So that's what we believe. And sociologically, that's the best setup also. That's proven. But in the end, for us, this is just a sin. Like, it's not a lifestyle. It's not even the worst thing in the entire world. You know, they're like, well, I'm gay. I'm not Hitler. No, you're not Hitler. You're not gassing Jews. But that's our point, is that it's just a sin. It can be, we all struggle with different sins. We all struggle with different attractions or tendencies or whatever it is. But those are just sins. And this is what's so beautiful about the saints. Like they would always kind of have that moment where they're like, but it's just the devil. Like we know where this comes from and the devil has been conquered. And this is just temptation. This is just a sin. And I think when the justification of sins, has been mastered by the homosexual movement. They're just... Don't we need Pride Month because it's wrong?
Yeah, there's an awareness that something is wrong here. And I think we see this particularly after that decision back in 2015 that imposed the same-sex marriage on all of us. Like, okay, you've got recognition from the government, from the corporations, from the education system, academia. Like, everybody affirms it, and still they're pleading for approval. And the fact that us or the listeners or whoever don't give our wholehearted endorsement to their lifestyle, they see it, I think, as sort of an indictment. They're looking to use us to silence perhaps their consciences.
They're not just using, it's not just about that, but they're continuing to put out that we've got safe spaces, especially for children. Children are a huge target now. Mm-hmm. So we've got safe spaces for children. We've got all these so-called mature, advanced postmodern adults, that are coming out and saying, well, we're going to be your family, essentially reiterating that separation of children from their parents. If you're a queer 6-year-old and your parents don't accept you, then you need to, come to us. And we're going to also advocate that the state legally separates you from your parents so that you can come to our household, which is a safe household. And there's been these petitions to basically have official, or maybe they're unofficial. They're like almost like the Jewish star to mark that you're a Jew. But now you have a house that will have a certain symbol on that house, so that if you're walking by that house and you're a child in the neighborhood who is not in a safe family, you can just come to this household and you'll be with a safe family. Total strangers, don't know anything about them, like children going into strangers' homes that have sexual issues, most likely, since they're advocating for this. That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, the Babylon Bee, which is a very credible news source, in my opinion, had an article saying that many people are putting the gay flag over their homes so that when the gay mob comes to kill them, it'll pass over their house.
Yes,
yes. Passover.
I've seen that.
Didn't work for BLM, though, remember?
It didn't work for BLM.
It didn't. That's right. That's right.
Well, I'm going to go back to the kids because that's a mistake. And I think that last category of the homosexuals that are like, we wanted freedom, we wanted rights, we're tired of the noise, we're tired of not like marching, I guess, maybe they are, but just the whole hoopla. They're sitting there going, we don't want to go after kids. That's a huge mistake, I think, for any movement, frankly. The pro-life movement, it's a little easier because of natural law. You can take like a 6 or 7-year-old and be like, listen to mommy's stomach or whatever. Put your hand up and you'll feel the baby kick. There's ways to do it, but I'm not showing a 6-year-old an aborted baby like a lunatic, and I don't think other people should too. If they do, that's how they're raising their kids. But the homosexuals are sitting there going, we don't need to teach like first graders about gay sex. And that's good for us because that's where they're going. Once they start going after the kids, and this is why the trans movement is going down the tubes, in my opinion. Europe and Canada have already banned minors transitioning. I mean, it's just crazy how quickly that's correcting itself. But America's leading the way on that front. But going after kids is a huge mistake. And it's kind of like they don't know what to do since 2015. So let's get weird. Let's have the dude in the dress. Let's have the kindergartners being read, Little Mermaid by the drag queen. And that's originally in the 80s and 90s, that was not the goal of the homosexuals. They basically wanted to be accepted and welcomed back at Christmas.
I'm a little skeptical on that. I think if you look into the history a little bit, there's some real nasty stuff early on that just gets glossed over a little bit historically. And
but my point, I don't mean to cut you off,
Sure.
but those people are like 60 now.
Sure.
And we do know from everything else that you're just less, whether you want to say zealous or whatever, crazy. And I know I just made the comment about the 63-year-old dudes walking down the street, but like overall, you can hear these interviews and you can hear comments from people that are gay and they're all like 55 and up and they're like, this crap's getting weird.
Yeah, I mean, the rainbow is very quickly getting crowded off of the rainbow flag. There's no room for it anymore. And Heather and I think last year, we did a leaders workshop in San Francisco in June. And so all that entails is there. And we were trying to figure out, there were 100 different iterations of the pride flag flying around. There's like the pride trans flag, the pride progress flag,
progress.
had like a circle on it, I think.
Yeah.
This may have been the Babylon Bee, but I think they put in like a blue and a yellow for the Ukrainian homosexuals. That was a joke.
That's a funny joke.
But now you've got like triangles and other triangles and circles and I don't know. They're just
like genders. There's an endless amount of flags now, and I saw one that I had never seen. I mean, that happens all the time. I saw one that I had never seen recently in Salt Lake City when I had the privilege of going there for the Heartbeat International Conference, and I actually didn't know what it had on it, so I took a picture of it so I could look at it. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, this thing looks like a whale. So it had a whale with all the colors and different directions and everything. I looked it up. So there is actually a pride whale flag. And it is...
I really hope you have the facts wrong on this.
Theocracy of the Sacred Whale. And the mission, according to one of their websites, thesacredwhale.org, is the mission of the Church of the Sacred Whale is to protect personal freedom and the natural world and to bring others closer to the divine sacred whale in accordance with its teachings. And it's on a pride flag.
Anybody who claims you're not getting like useful information on this podcast,
yeah, exactly,
is dead wrong. I mean, where else are you going to hear that? I'm learning this. Mm-hmm. I have some questions, as I'm sure the audience does. Why is it a whale?
I don't know. That's what I'm wondering too.
Is it like Jonah the whale?
No.
The sea was angry that day.
The sea was angry that day, my friends. Is that a titleist?
Actually, I say no. I don't recall reading that anywhere in some of what I was looking up earlier, but I was trying to find that as well. Like, where did the whale is sacred people come from? How far is this spread? I don't know. But it was on a flag outside of a home.
It's not like, we have to say, this isn't like an Anchorman reference.
I don't know.
Okay.
San Diego.
I mean, so I don't know.
But there's other animals I've seen too since I saw that, I've seen other animals.
But see, to me, the whale, and we have this in the pro-life movement. We're not perfect. We hear a lot of ideas, and we hear some of them aren't that great, and we're like, well, I don't think we should do that. Some, many, but that's the way it is. I've had a lot of dumb pro-life ideas. You know what'll change the world is if we do this. And somebody's like, that's really stupid, and I'm like, you're right, but that's a lost movement. So you go from Ellen, who was like a major TV star. Okay.
And Friends. Friends was big on having the lesbian wedding. And
yes. So all that's being forced. And man, it is going against the grain. It really is. And I mean, Target, way back when, was doing gay wedding registrations before gay marriage was approved. I mean, Target's been horrible for a long time.
Yeah, because they had cards.
They had
the
cards, yeah.
section, yeah.
And I mean, we went to register, like when we were getting married at Target. Mary Lisa loved Target, and we saw that, and we were like, "Oh no, we left, and we haven't been able to go to Target since." But Steve is laughing. But that's not good for them, which is good for us, right? But like if they're having the 28 flags and all this stuff, that's a lost. And I don't know. Well, I do know, but the face of the pro-homosexual movement is the fringe and the crazies, and really it's been totally hijacked by the trans movement, which we get into and what to say when too, but just how basically that this has been infiltrated and they just dominate.
On my flight down here, I flipped on the airplane The Office, and Steve Carell...
Not the gay witch hunt.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Steve Carell says something like insensitive to homosexuals, and HR calls him in and complains that he's making the homosexuals in the office, people are uncomfortable with that. He's like, so now corporate decides it's on me to try to reverse 100,000 years of human experience.
Right.
It's so true. Okay, so let's get into that. Gay Pride Month has lost its a little shininess. It started last year, but we saw trends. I kind of thought this is all going to come back, and corporate America's woke. But there is a huge cultural backlash against this, and it's not from religious people. I mean, sadly, I think the church is in bad shape, and been very, very weak in dealing with homosexuals individually by not helping them authentically or patting them on the head, or in some denominations ordaining them to the ministry, but which is just absurd. And so we've done a disservice to the individual souls, like patting them congratulating them on their sin, which is the worst thing that could happen to us or them. But then there's just been a lot of fear of we don't want to talk about it. But we're not seeing that in the secular world with people like, well, you take like the whole Daily Wire crew, but Jordan Peterson, who just continues to evolve and get all these, people on board with what he's saying, which is common sense. I mean, he is strong against Pride Month. Even Joe Rogan. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was their guy. Like if you were liberal like 6 or 7 years ago, Joe Rogan's your guy. He wants to legalize weed, and he believes in aliens, and he's cool, and he works out, and it's like you can be a jock and he's great. You can be a hippie and he's great. You can be pro-abortion and he's great. And it's just I think, number one, they're going after the kids, and number two, people are worn out by it. They're sick of it. They don't care.
I've seen a few people coming online on social media too, talking about how they, they're in their 50s or 60s now, and they fought more in the beginning of the movement for acceptance and awareness and all this stuff, and they're just having on camera this realization of how bad. And they said, "This is not what I envisioned, and I'm sorry, and I regret the part that I took in this because now it has gone too far." And I've seen that with several people on video, not just posts, because a lot of times it's like you wonder if that's a real life person and that's a real life situation with all the bots and everything,
right?
And the fake people that are on social media. But I think that that's interesting that they're first of all that it even made it to where anybody could see it, that it wasn't censored before I saw it or other people saw it. But that's a real admission.
It is a real admission, and it's very common. I mean, we talk about Ellen and Friends and all that, but Philadelphia. I mean, Philadelphia, the movie, which I think Tom Hanks won the Academy Award for, is the perfect sales pitch for gays. So he's a victim because he's sick, he has AIDS. He is extremely talented and a good worker, but the angry, mean old white guys don't like him, and they're mean to him, and they don't like him because he's gay. So he's persecuted. Mm. He's sick. He's the perfect victim. Mm. They're trying to kind of like make him into Jesus. And he's suffering, and Antonio Banderas is his little gay partner, and they're all sad and all that. And that was the angle. Like, we've got to tug at the heart. Like, we're people too. Yeah. That's gone. That's a joke now. I mean, that's absurd. Now they're like, yelling at us and telling us that we're coming after your kids, and they're going to accept homosexual sex, and they need to be trained on it, and they need to, and it's just you will submit to us. And it's very, very dangerous, and I think it's killing their movement. So, okay, let's look at a couple of things. Number one, the boycotts of last year had staying power.
Can you think of a time anywhere in the history of like the Christian, conservative, whatever folks who are traditionally aligned with pro-lifers where a boycott has ever worked before? Because to my knowledge, this is the first time where it's ever people tried to boycott Target back in like 2015, 2016 when the whole trans thing kind of started. And 3 months later, you need a pair of sandals or a ream of paper and you're back at Target. It just never took. But this year it has taken. Like Bud Light is still a joke. They lost their position as the top commercial beer. The Bud Light parent company, their sales to U.S. retailers are down 13.7%, and Bud Light has gone out and completely revamped their marketing strategy. They're trying to they're sponsoring the UFC, like the MMA fighting now, and on top of that,
but with Bud Light, the initial loss was $27 billion.
Just tremendous.
Just like the first 6 weeks. It was just unbelievable, the hit that they took. This also ties into things being boycottable. Mm-hmm. And beer is boycottable.
Yes.
Light beer is very boycottable because there's a million of them. And now you have Heineken, Yuengling. They all make light beers. It's not just Coors, Miller, and Bud Light, which is what it was. You either drank those because you were classy, or you had like Natty Light because that's what the folks drink. And that was it. But now the craft beers, wine is kind of taken off. You can get a cheap bottle of wine for $6. It's just a different atmosphere than it was in 1995. Mm-hmm. And Bud Light was very boycottable. I don't understand it about Target. We'll get to Target in a minute. But with Amazon, that's what surprises me about the Target stuff. But they absolutely got hammered. And if you would have told me, now Modelo's the number one beer in the United States, which makes Corona and Dos Equis and all the Mexican beers. And they're not gay or trans. They just make beer, which is a new concept. So
there's a great article in USA Today last month, and they quoted an alcoholic beverage industry consultant. Whatever, I don't know how you get that on your business card, but the quote from him was, "Boycotters haven't forgotten, and they've found new light beer brands to purchase." To me, I think that's why it's sustainable, is because it's not like, okay, you can only go without shoes for so long until you pick which sweatshop company you're going to buy a pair of shoes from. But there's a lot on the market, like you mentioned, and people have just moved on. There's no turning back. You develop new preferences, new brand loyalty or allegiance, and that market share is not coming back. They blew it. And I think other companies are seeing it and saying, well, I don't want that to be me.
Yeah, the Bud Light thing really worked, and they're giant, and they're one of the oldest companies in our country. And so if you can see them over the stupid can with Dylan on it, and it's just, you're forcing this on me. Talk about having no clue of your Bud Light drinker. Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. Okay, so Target, last year, their sales were down 1.6% in 2023. The reason that's significant, it doesn't sound like a lot, that's the first revenue decline in 7 years.
Yeah.
That's crazy. They lost $14 billion in market value over the sale of trans apparel.
And their shareholders are coming after them. This is something you predicted early on, I think, even not just on the trans stuff and the homosexual stuff, but on the abortion thing, where these companies are in business to make money for their shareholders, employ people, and suddenly when you are putting something ahead of that fiduciary responsibility, you're now liable. And so the shareholders are saying, hey, we didn't invest in Target because we wanted you to be selling trans-friendly swimwear. We did it so that you could sell a swimming suit and we can make money off of that sale, not because we're looking to like change what it means to wear a swimming suit into some sort of like bizarre fantasyland world. So I don't know. There's a lot of headaches that they've got.
Don't you think that those two, mainly the Bud Light thing, it helps kill the corporate activism?
Yeah, because we don't like, it could be overwhelming to think, okay, we need to boycott every last company. That's like going fishing and thinking you're going to catch all the fish.
Well, every company does something that you disagree with. I
Yeah.
think there's levels of it where you're like, look, man, I just can't go in there. But that's just the nature of capitalism. But it's always had the theme of making money, pleasing the shareholders, delivering a great product at a reasonable price in a wonderful environment, which probably nobody did better than Starbucks. I mean, Starbucks is just phenomenal. And then they went nuts and became an activist company. And everybody's like, but you created you're the best at what you do. You can go anywhere in the world, and Starbucks is the same. It smells good. The coffee's good. It's amazing. And now we can't go there because you lost your mind. And I think that the Bud Light thing just sort of highlighted that for the first time. By the way, I think Starbucks closed 600 stores last year.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, they're getting crushed because there's a million different. It's probably not as good as Starbucks. People are like, well, I don't even like their coffee. And I'm like, no, Starbucks is good. But it's there's other options. There's a lot of other options.
I liked Starbucks. I haven't shopped there intentionally for many years, and I appreciate that this may be helping contribute to what you're talking about. There are many more options, particularly in airports. For the longest time, it seemed like that was the only coffee you could get was Starbucks coffee. And if I ever went into Starbucks, it was because I had a gift card. It was like, that's the only reason, because I just was so disgruntled and frustrated about, all the things that they were pushing. But I've noticed that Starbucks is not the only option in places like airports where you're kind of stuck and you can't drive around somewhere else and go get coffee somewhere. But I mean, I'm not one of those that says, oh, Starbucks sucks anyway. Like, yeah, I like their coffee. I don't think it's worth paying 3 times the amount when I can get almost as good, if not as good, coffee at several other places. So, maybe that kind of contributes that there's more options too that are really becoming more popular. Dutch Brothers is like a big thing that's becoming more popular.
Coffee. This is a controversial topic.
Oh,
Dutch Bros Coffee doesn't have coffee.
I have gotten coffee there before.
You got to dig for it. It's a bunch of slushies and stuff no one cares about. I'm like,
I've gotten
I want
coffee
black
there.
coffee. They're like, do you want iced? I'm like, no. They have all this weird stuff. It couldn't find coffee. So Panera Bread, McDonald's.
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A redid their coffee. Buc-ee's coffee needs to be better. It's disappointing.
I don't think I've ever had Buc-ee's coffee.
Only disappointing thing about Buc-ee's, I still drink it, but it's like 79 cents for like 44 ounces. And I'm like, can you make it $1.50 and like make it better?
Make it better.
I was in Arizona, and I found the pro-lifers told me there was a coffee shop with a Eucharistic adoration chapel in it. So I had my lemonade, and then I got to go pray for an hour. It was great.
Oh, my goodness.
Steve got lemonade because he doesn't drink coffee. Whataburger just updated their coffee. This is a huge announcement recently released. So I've not tried it.
Whataburger is a fast food joint. Started in Corpus Christi. I don't know how many states it's in now, but it's big in Texas.
And they got "In God We Trust" all over their windows.
That's right. They do.
And they're going nationwide. They were actually bought out by a Chicago group a couple of years ago.
Oh, that's
And the people said, "We're not changing it. We believe in your values, all that." And they've kept that.
Oh, okay.
They've kept it, and it's been consistent. But Whataburger will serve you whatever you want 24 hours a day. So now when you go in, like I took Robert at 6 o'clock in the morning one time. We were driving in the middle of nowhere near San Antonio, and we didn't. And he's like, "Can I have a hamburger for breakfast? Can I have a hamburger for breakfast?" I'm like, "Yeah, you can. Once you throw a bunch of Brits out of your country and get your own constitution, whatever you want." So, and he had the Monterey, which is legit. It's got like spicy peppers, but now Robert could have an awesome cup of coffee with that cheeseburger.
This is something I think that the listeners and viewers should know, is that there's nothing better than having breakfast with Sean Carney, because all the rules are out. Sean is not a moral relativism guy, but when it comes to breakfast, like we went and had tacos for breakfast one day. It was spectacular.
Were they breakfast tacos?
No, they were
like fajitas, because I don't like breakfast foods a lot.
Oh, well.
And so,
I'm the opposite of Sean then.
my stepbrother still laughs at me for this, and he was so embarrassed. But I sat there at like 8 o'clock in the morning at Rudy's one time, because Rudy's does breakfast tacos, which are phenomenal, by the way. And I negotiated with the guy to give me a rack of ribs. And he's like, we're not allowed to do that. We don't do that. I was like, okay. And I was like friendly. I wasn't being like that guy. But he's like, I have to ask my manager. I was like, oh, bring him out here. I was like, this is a compliment. I want your ribs at 8 o'clock. And my stepbrother Joshua is like, you stop. You can't have ribs. It's 8:00 in the morning. I'm like, hey, we're at Rudy's. They've got them. They're in the smoker. I know they got them, you know.
Don't tread on
And the
me.
manager came out and I was like, I love y'all. I want some ribs. And he's like, all right, we can do half a rack. I was like, I'll take it.
Nice.
We sat down and I started eating my ribs, and Josh was like,
Oh my gosh.
I'm so embarrassed. I was like, this is your embarrassing moment of all the things we've been through. So
One more point I want to make on Target before we jump off of that. This is how bad it's gotten. Think about what inflation has done this year. Have prices gone down on anything in the last 5 years? No, they're all through the roof. Mm-hmm. Target is dropping prices to try to recoup sales that they've lost in the last year.
really, see, because Walmart and Target are amazing with this, in that they have somehow thrived in the world of Amazon. And I used to go to Walmart all the time, and we just don't. We have HEB, thank God. But Target, I just realized they have like the cult suburban mom following. You go in there, it smells great, you get your Starbucks, you walk around and you buy stuff, and it's well priced, it's nice, it's clean, it's not Walmart. And I just assume they're never going away. They're never going to suffer from Walmart or Amazon, and they just have such a loyal fan base. And for there to be like a crack in the door is pretty phenomenal. But, you know, on the other end of this, I don't know if you saw what the J.P. Morgan Chase CEO said, but he was at some leadership conference or CEO conference, and he said something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, I read the article, I'm not woke, I'm a freedom-loving American capitalist.
Shocker.
He's the CEO of Chase. You're darn right he better be a capitalist, you know. And it's just like, when are we going to get back to common sense? He didn't say, we got to look, maybe the Chase logo is the gay pride flag this month, who knows. But that whole thing of just like, we are a massive bank. We make money. We don't get involved in all this other stuff. And I'm not mad if some big bank or some big fast food chain doesn't come and say, we support, we are 100% pro-life, no exceptions. There needs to be an independence for the marketplace. And once they start dabbling in the culture war, which is what the Koch brothers said, the Koch brothers regretted ever getting involved in politics and the culture war. And they were big Republican donors, fiscally conservative, socially not so much. But, eventually you just wear yourself out and you're like, oh, man, we need to make soda. We need to sell cars. We need to do whatever. And so, okay.
I want to ask, though, with the timeline here, you said in the 7 years, where does it say that? It's the first decline in 7 years. That's 2018. Does that align with when they started saying we're going to let men in women's bathrooms?
2017.
2017?
Yeah, it might. I don't know. Maybe related.
Okay.
I don't know.
They were early on that. I don't know if it was that. Maybe it was that long ago. I don't know.
Because I remember thinking at that time, I don't want to go shop at Target. That is
I haven't gone to
significant.
Target since like 2016 for that reason.
That's a significant issue. That's not just whatever, that's just the secular world. It's now changing rooms are not safe anymore. Now anybody can go into a women's restroom and claim they're a man. And I remember some conservatives brushing that off. Saying, well, who cares, like, who's peeing in the stall next to you? And
it was in the Republican convention in 2016. Peter Thiel got up there and he was talking about, like, made up gender ideology, or he was basically saying, like, who cares? Because he's a homosexual man, but he was pro-Trump. He's like, this is just made up controversy. I'm like, it's not made up for my wife who's going to be in the changing room trying something on, or my daughters.
Right.
So it goes back to at least 2016. Yeah, you might be right. You might be right that could be it. But this year, the Pride merchandise selection is being scaled back, even at Target, which has long been sort of the leader corporate-wise on this stuff. And we got a great quote here from one of the designers whose Pride apparel was pulled from the shelves. He said, at the end of the day, the pink dollar isn't quite as strong as the Christian rights dollar.
Interesting.
Good job.
So here's my issue with that. I don't think the Christian right dollar is strong. I think common sense is reemerging. I don't think that we're this super devoutly religious Christian country. I don't think most people believe that. This isn't 1956. And so that that's just like, hey, we're done. We don't like the weird stuff. We don't agree with it. And even if we kind of agree with it and you want to go do your own thing, you want to live a gay lifestyle, that's great. You got to leave me alone. You're wearing me out.
Yeah.
You got to leave me alone.
It's why Shout Your Abortion failed.
It's why Shout Your Abortion failed. Okay, this is something that is awesome. God bless Riley Gaines, who has led this movement, the Kentucky swimmer who was 12-time All-American, 5-time All-SEC. She loses to that dude, Will. Leah Thomas is Will Thomas. And he's 6'4". He's like the 460th male swimmer in the country. She's number 2 behind him. He beats her by a full body length, and then she ties him, actually, and they give the award to him anyways. So just the greatest sexism. You could make this stuff up, and we get into this and what to say when, too. But this has infiltrated abortion because we're also seeing the backlash of all of this. The NCAA is shameful with how they've handled this. Yep. Awful. Yep. They hate women. They don't care about women's sports. We're still following, what's her name? The WNBA lady who's now awesome. She was at Iowa. What's her name? Caitlin Clark. Yeah, Caitlin Clark. They're all kind of propping her up. They don't care about her. They don't care about women at all. It's an absolute joke. And so with that said, the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics set a new policy that only, I don't even know if I can say biologically female because that doesn't make sense. There's only females. But basically only biological female athletes may participate in female sports. That's crazy. So the girls are going to do girls basketball.
Yeah, and these are mostly small schools, but it's a start. There is a bit of common sense coming through, and we see that.
The fact that you have to say that.
No, yeah.
It's just crazy. This is the thing that just no one can believe is happening. You have losers. Will Thomas is a loser. He sucked. He was 460th in the country as a dude. So he threw a fit and started dressing up like a girl, went into girls' locker rooms. He was still sleeping with women, by the way. Okay? So he's in, the girls are all calling, Riley Gaines has highlighted all that. They're just doing what girls do. They're jumping around, trying to cover themselves because this 6'4" dude is walking around and he blows them all away and wins. And the NCAA is just clapping. How is that not sexist?
Well, their policy is now, quote, under review and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a sign that they're going to do the right thing or if it's let's refer it to a committee and we can never have to answer the question. But it's under review. World Athletics, which governs track and field competitions, they also have allowed common sense to reign by restricting women's sports to, again, shocker, just women.
Well, there's another thing, and this is just the classic MO that we've talked about on the podcast before, which is there was another situation where they were going to let one of the teams vote. The women were going to vote whether this dude could join the team. And they were all going to vote no because it was anonymous. And so the coach comes in and brings the dude. Mm-hmm. And he says, I really want to be on y'all's team, and if you don't vote for me, I'll kill myself.
Yep.
So now, which is all BS as far as using suicide to get whatever you want. And again, these are all cowards. These are hurting mentally ill people. That's not a normal thing to do. If I don't get a raise at my job, I'll kill myself.
Right.
If my kid doesn't start at quarterback, I'll kill myself. That's not how sane people operate. And also, you're just not responsible for somebody else killing themselves. That's another kind of myth. It's emotional abuse. And so they all, they're well-meaning 19, 20-year-old women, and they're voted them on the team.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that, which is sad.
That sort of thing happens, and I don't know that everybody stops and thinks about what that means. That means somebody who was maybe otherwise going to be on the team, not on the team. That means that some woman somewhere who was going to get a scholarship is not getting a scholarship. And people are waking up to this. The public opinion is shifting in our direction on it for sure. The numbers are there. And we see it, I think, now starting to trickle down to lower ages. Did you see the video of, I think it was 5th grade shot put competition where these girls were competing in their track and field meet, and there was going to be a boy participating, claiming to be a girl in the shot put. And every girl went up for her turn to I guess it's not called throwing, it's putting the shot, and just set it down and walked away. And so nobody would compete against this guy. And kids are leading us. They ended up paying a price for it. In West Virginia, of all places, these fifth graders got suspended for not being willing to compete. But that's the type of truth-telling that really puts the lie to all of this and will bring about its ultimate demise.
It is a hatred of women, because all of this is mainly led by gay men. Most of the trans movement. That's the Bruce Jenner, that's the Leah Thomas, Willie Thomas, all that. He's now in a relationship with a homosexual male, by the way. But it's all this aggressiveness. And we talked about that with abortion, that women aren't the winners, bad men are. And it's definitely the case for this trans stuff. I mean, we're just letting girls get trampled on by dudes. UFC came out strong because, they had a guy fight in the women's competition. And
Kill somebody.
They beat the crap out of this girl. And they didn't know. And so then they had to ban, But it was a guy fighting a girl. Nearly killed her.
And we've seen a lot of videos come, across social media with a lot of those instances where even in volleyball games where a woman was knocked unconscious from a guy that was playing on the opposite team. And
volleyball is not supposed to be a contact sport.
No, it's not. My favorite is when the supporters of all of this nonsense will look at somebody like Riley Gaines and say, well, you're just being a crybaby. You're being a sore loser. You need to try harder.
Yep.
And I'm like, because we are equal to men.
Yep.
And therefore, we have an even playing field. No, that's not how that works. That's why we have women's and men's sports for, to quote Michael Scott, we want to uproot 100,000 years.
Yeah, 100,000 years. And men and women are different. And they're built differently, and they're certainly built differently for sports. That's never been disputed. You don't get to rewrite history. And then when we say you don't get to rewrite history and you threaten to kill yourself, you don't get to do that either. You don't get to flash suicide out, because that is a temper tantrum. And all of the stats show that it's the opposite. If you are confirmed in this and you get surgery and you are now fully a woman or fully a dude or whatever, those people commit suicide at a much higher rate.
Yeah.
And this was an interesting Matt Walsh point that he made in an interview I heard with him, which is the claim is that if you have a teenager and they say, I'm really supposed to be a girl, and if I'm not a girl, I'll kill myself. And that's been the way through the history of the world. He said, we've kept up with suicides long enough to where we would be able to look back and be like, why was there this teen suicide epidemic? If we've always had the trans people, it's not a new phenomenon. We've always had a lot of people that were supposed to be the opposite, and they weren't allowed to switch because society was evil, and therefore they killed themselves. That's proven that happens. There's no data supporting that whatever. It's completely made up now. And of course, suicide is horrible. And of course, we see teen suicide rates through the roof. But there's a reason for that. And the psychiatrists who are talking about this, the psychologists who are talking about this, Jordan Peterson has been talking about this, they just get ignored. That the I'm supposed to be a girl is not the problem. That's a symptom. Like, you're denying your own existence. And something happened.
Right.
It's either a fad, like I want to be cool, and that now is just totally overtaken everything. Or there's abuse, there's physical abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's emotional abuse. There's somebody in your life has hurt you to where you don't think you're good enough and you're not. And of course, our message is you're beautiful and you're perfect and you are who you are. Like, we're the ones saying you be you, which, by the way, you're a boy or you're a girl or you're a man or you're a woman. We've just gotten in our own heads and then convinced ourselves if we don't get what we want, we're going to kill ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's a logical culmination of the rhetoric we've seen just escalating for a while. It used to be like, oh, if you vote for this guy, they're going to take away your Medicare. And it just kept, the ante kept getting up until now. You can't go any further than people will die. And so everything, as we've talked about repeatedly, people will die.
Was it Bush Carey where they had the grandma in the wheelchair going off the cliff?
I think so.
I love that. That was hysterical. That's when you knew the whole country was going down the toilet. It's like, if you vote for George W. Bush, this is going to happen to Granny. And she, I don't know who the actress was, this poor woman, but they like put this old lady in a wheelchair. They wheel her off a cliff, and she's.
Biden said to an audience of African American people, Romney's going to put you all back in chains.
But he did like the Southern Baptist that, like, I don't know if he was like supposed to be a black Baptist preacher or he was supposed to be like a plantation owner, but he was like, they want to put y'all back in chains. And the crowd's like, that makes me uncomfortable when you say it. And even there, like the black Democrats were like, that's a little over the top.
Not anymore. Now just say people will die. And
people will die.
People will die.
Okay, so really quick, Steve, the state legislation. Okay, so we've had 75 state-level laws regulating trans issues that were enacted by the end of 2023.
Yeah, 21 regulating the transitioning of minors. Missouri allows trans patients to sue their trans services providers. So you get kind of manipulated into this, and then a few years later, or however long you were like, hey, they kind of didn't really like check to see, you can come back after them. 11 states are now regulating state athletics. 10 are limiting classroom indoctrination on LGBTQ issues and or pronouns. 8 of these laws relate to bathroom use and who should use which bathrooms. Other laws include restrictions on drag shows for minors. Whoa.
Sadly, it's needed.
Family-friendly drag shows. Who knew that was a thing?
Why do these pervs want to be around our kids? No one's asking that. Well, half the population or more is asking that now.
Yeah.
Laws defining sex, laws regulating changing your sex on your birth certificate. And so that's 75 different laws. Just last year alone, we've had 30 more so far in 2024. And you see support for criminalizing, quote, gender-affirming care went from just 28% in 2021 to 43% last year. So the people are like, hey, this whole mutilating people should be banned. That's risen dramatically just in the last few years.
See, here's the issue with this, is that the trans people have invaded and taken over the homosexual movement. Okay, so they have their highest victory ever. We redefined marriage in 2015, and then they get invaded. But they're not a winning leader. This is like putting in the quarterback who you know can't lead the team to the Super Bowl. And so it's not going to work. And it's not working. The homosexual movement never had this. They never had a year-to-year just flip. 75 state laws regulating trans. The homosexuals had the opposite, where it was like they fail in California, then the Supreme Court, the referendums fail, and then they just go through the courts, and then it's just like boom, 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 boom. You got to have gay marriage, and it just happened overnight. They never had like a correctional year where everybody's like, hey, even Obama is against gay marriage. We're not doing that. We never had that. And the trans is having that because we get into this in the book, but there's a disconnect within their own movement. And we hear this from people who identify as gay and lesbian. They don't like the trans movement. It's overtaken them. And by the way, being male and female matters to gays and lesbians. It's actually a pretty big part of the decision. Okay? It's the decision. Okay? Gay men like gay men. Lesbians like women. And
when they're pressured for not liking a trans woman, then it's like, no, that was the whole point.
That was the whole point. And so anyways, it's really driving it into the ground.
That backlash is now, you said there's never been a correction on the LGB part of the LGBTQ analogy. Right. And now the TQ backlash is spilling over because I don't know if you saw, but there's some public opinion research out which is showing for the first time you are seeing a decrease in support. Same-sex marriage, supposedly a decided issue. Like, we're never going back. And I still have some doubts about whether we'll be able to claw that one back in our lifetimes. But a settled issue. Now nobody except for those extreme Christians opposes marriage equality for all. But support for same-sex marriage decreased among Republicans, independents, and Democrats last year.
That's shocking. And I'm in the camp of we'll never get rid of it. But if this stuff continues, the other thing that I think is okay now that we have data on that was not okay for gay people in 2015 is there was a good chunk of them that didn't want gay marriage. Mm-hmm. They're like, I don't want to get married. I mean, promiscuity is a big deal to the homosexual movement, and so which they've told us. This isn't us like projecting on them. They've told us this, and in many different ways. But it's kind of okay now to be like, I don't know. I know a lot of gay people. They didn't get married.
Right.
Well, there's this really amazing former Planned Parenthood sex educator, Monica Klein, who has shared about this many times before publicly. She's talked about how her part of her role was actually serving the homosexual community. And she recalls that one of the common things was it wasn't about health. It was literally about what are all the things you can put on to try to avoid. It was the sexual risk avoidance rather than what did they say? It's sexual risk avoidance rather than, now I'm losing my train of thought. But essentially, it's not about having a healthy lifestyle. It's how can we do as many things as possible and try to prevent
harms reduction.
Sexual risk reduction
it's like
versus
let's
avoidance.
Let them shoot up their heroin in a safe environment.
Exactly. Let's give them, provide clean needles. It's that exact same kind
Steve
of
knows all the
mindset.
terms when it comes to these issues.
I love drugs.
But but one of the creepy things that Monica talks about is the fact that like they were making sure that they knew certain parts of the community and wooded areas that they can go to essentially have these orgies and stuff. And she remembers talking to them, like just having these thoughts all throughout this, like, this is not right. Something there, here I'm trying to help these people. And, don't you want a monogamous relationship? Like you fought for marriage equality, and isn't this what you want, rather than we're a bunch of animals and we're going to go into the woods and have these orgies? And so
there's some practical things. A lot of states have a huge mosquito problem. Somebody's like, we're going out in the woods having an orgy.
That'd be a problem.
There's not enough bug spray in the world to get me to join you. Yeah,
that's a great point.
Besides all the other reasons.
Yeah,
We thought we'd invite you. I'm not going.
It's okay. We have the mosquito repellent.
That's it.
You will be fine.
We're all going to smell great with a bunch of deep woods off on us. Great bug spray, by the way. Okay, we won't lump them in with the woods orgy people. Okay, so the liberals are speaking out. J.K. Rowling is speaking out, but they're just saying, no, you're not a dude.
Yeah.
You're not a woman.
She's a TERF. You know what that means.
What is that?
Trans exclusionary radical feminist.
I love that.
She's like one of the number one TERFs.
That's awesome. I've seen T-shirts too. You should get one. I would, but a guy. I'm a real woman.
I'm a real woman.
I love that. We have to have those.
Shout my womanhood.
Yes. They're trying to kill women.
Yeah.
Okay.
J.K. Rowling went so far as to they passed like this hate crime law in Scotland, because of course they did, right? And so she went out and labeled a bunch of trans people like these guys are really just men, and basically came out and dared the authorities to arrest her for violating this hate crime.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And even in Scotland, where they've gone so woke in Scotland, and the public agrees with J.K. Rowling on this.
Good.
Let me ask you. I haven't read the Harry Potter thing, but I respect the phenomenon of just the books and kids like standing in line, like Six Flags, reading the book, waiting for the next one to come out.
My cousin read a book during a wedding.
Yeah,
the entire time.
I mean, it's almost like isn't she untouchable?
Not anymore. She's now super controversial.
See, that's shocking to me. She has like. Maybe it's not fair to say Michael Jordan, but she has that kind of air of just say whatever she wants.
I think she is, and that's why they're so frustrated. That's why they're attacking her so much.
And that she's willing to do it. I mean, good for her.
Yeah.
Because so many people, and she's totally liberal, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she's one of their advocates. And she's like, y'all are crazy. This is an attack on women. The other thing, more Democrats want to limit girls' sports just to girls. Isn't that a great concept?
Yeah, 48 to 47, and it switched back this year in favor of sanity.
I mentioned this earlier. Europe is reining in trans care for minors. The UK is banning puberty blockers. This, I'm really hoping, I said this a year ago, that all this is crystal clear Pepsi. Remember crystal clear
yeah, that's
Pepsi?
right. Yeah.
And then we just laughed.
Because
at
I
it.
had
We were
never
like, why
heard
did
about
we
it.
get all into that? And it was just Pepsi, but it was clear. And I was like in the 5th grade, and I drank like 1,000 of them a day. And it's like, this is so cool. And then 6 months later, you're like, this is stupid. I don't even like Pepsi.
It's from when we were in high school, the equivalent of Limp Biscuit.
Yes. And remember Surge?
That stuff is, I will defend Surge.
That is some nasty junk that you would have loved.
I did love it. And if I could find it, I would drink it now. With green. Mountain Dew was just yellow. This took it to the next level. You're drinking green stuff. It's organic.
Is it not around anymore? I thought it still was.
No, it was like rightly banned by somebody.
I think it has Deep Woods Off in it.
Surge was definitely at the Woods.
Excellent, a great
That's what
beverage.
those people were living on is Surge. It had, if
gosh.
you read the ingredients, there's nothing in it that's from the earth. And not that I'm like some health nut, but like I had like one Surge and you're like, ah, because it has like 10 times the amount of caffeine as Mountain Dew. And I'm sitting here going, I don't know.
I want some right now.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Gross.
Give me the needle. We got to find a Surge and give it to Steve.
Yeah.
Yes,
it'll
please.
Be a
Laura will
Listeners,
kill us.
anybody, please send me your Surge. I want it.
Surge to Steve.
But when we have to read this, UK is banning puberty blockers. Like, I think I'm hopeful. I really am hopeful. And not because, I mean, obviously, like, the Christians are sitting here, but our you know, we're only so many. It is in the secular world, they're recognizing this is nuts. And that is what is so encouraging.
2 weeks ago, I think it was, we did, maybe 3, we did the Memorial Day episode of the podcast. I'd love to ask my Grandpa Joe or Lieutenant Colonel John Ewell, what do you think about banning puberty blockers?
No.
Wouldn't register.
No, my grandfather, I am so grateful that he died in 1996. He could not have handled this. Like, this would have been a disaster. I mean, you can't explain this.
I've also heard that said about our grandparents' generation and STDs. Like, if you were to sit with them at the dinner table in the 1950s and ask them about STDs, you'd be like, what are you talking about?
So what we say is the sophisticated, people that we are living in 2024 is we say, well, I had a big hang up about sex and all. Marilyn Monroe, she had a hang up about sex. I mean, in the 50s, we were like this. The Roaring 20s was crazy. And you're like, well, they had a big hang up. They didn't like to talk about sex. They had a hang up about sex and all that. And it's like, no. Now we have the hang up about sex. We're transitioning our kids. We're the ones with the hang up about sex. We're the ones that mock the fact that a baby comes from sex. That's what happens. Okay, sorry.
You missed also the detransitioners, so there's this bigger and bigger wave of them.
They're like the former Planned Parenthood workers.
Exactly.
Detransitioners are coming out. They're bringing their lawyers.
Powerful.
A court recently ruled that a detransitioner's lawsuit can proceed, and that has not been happening. So that is good.
Crazy.
Also, we got to do a shout out to the other liberals. I mean, we mentioned Joe Rogan. He's been talking about this. Elon Musk has been talking about this. Bill Maher, obviously, he's had some of the best.
His best line we cannot share on this podcast.
His best line on this is we can't share, but it's amazing. It refers to a saw. I'll give a little hint and say somebody.
You really want to find it?
Somebody wants to Google it. Yeah, Google that. Bill Maher saw. Don't Google month of sexual deviance. Whatever you're writing. Okay, colleges across the country are getting rid of DEI. This is a real thing. North Carolina.
If you've lost the colleges,
All of these are liberal. North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Ohio,
Yeah, but
Texas,
as
Florida.
with many things, do you know that many of these places are getting rid of it? They're actually just replacing it. So there's a new acronym now, IDEA, which is the exact thing.
But that's not going to work either. I mean, that's fine. That's like saying...
It's just their next attempt to try to keep this
Right.
because DEI has now become too controversial, even with people who are more left-leaning.
But it's still broken. It's like my 22-year-old car always breaks down, so I'm getting a 22-year-old car to replace it.
Right.
And you're like, well, you're going to have the
Right.
same problem. So
Right.
I'm confident in that area. Was it Harvard?
That
Just made an announcement, I think, this week. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, in the Ivy League schools, of course, they have so much money and their endowments are huge, but I don't know how you could actually hurt them. I mean, people are always going to apply to Harvard and Columbia and Yale, but boy, they've lost some credibility to where, because you should be proud if your kid gets into Harvard or Yale. And over the last year, it's kind of one of those things you may not mention first. Yeah, Billy got into Ohio State. All right, Eddie George, the Buckeyes, yeah. Where anywhere else? Harvard. Oh, he hates Jews? I didn't know that. You know, I mean, it's just, they're so...
Probably drinking Bud Light at those frat
They're
parties.
drinking Bud Light at the frat parties, making fun of Jews. I mean, they've just really damaged themselves on a level that you can't do. And, okay, with those victories, there are 3 reasons for caution. Steve, what are they?
Yeah, much of this progress has been on the TQ plus side of the acronym. We still got a long ways, as we mentioned, to go on the LGB. Like, granted, there's been some progress in public opinion on the marriage issue, but we're a long way before we take back marriage. So I think we can't get too excited about this being over.
And we don't have time to get into it, but people are probably like, well, what does he mean? But the surrogacy and the gay adoption, that stuff is real, and the kids are growing up.
Yeah.
And it's weird to have 2 dads and no mom. It's unnatural.
Yeah.
Child abuse.
Another cause for concern, 1 in 3 Gen Z adults identify as LGBTQ+. I think they're just bored.
Yeah.
But that's got to be reined in. And we also see just real marriage remains in sharp decline. Divorce, lack of marriage in the first place. I mean, I think when we were kids, it was like, well, half of marriages end in divorce, and that was a disaster. Now you can't even get people to the altar in the first place. So
Right.
that's a real crisis. So we've got a long ways to go. But the fact is, I'm hopeful. You know, last year when we did these podcasts, we said one of these years we're going to hit rock bottom and the tide will turn. And it is entirely, everything's up for grabs right now. We can't take anything for granted, but it's entirely conceivable that 50 years from now, we look back and see that 2023 to 2024 was the year that the pendulum shifted back towards sanity. And so we've got to just keep it up, keep not drinking Bud Light. And
Well, we owe Bud Light a lot of gratitude.
yes.
I mean, that without that controversy, it happened in late March, right? It goes into April. Maybe it happened in April, but it had 60 days of just full-blown speed going into Pride Month. And by that time, people are like, all right, this is out of control. So, but yeah, I think we are seeing the tide turn. It's good. It's healthy. And it's not driven, the rejection of Pride Month and just everybody being worn out on this is not driven by what they want it to be driven by, which is bigotry and anger and mean people that read the Bible. That's not what's happening here. It's been driven by decency, maturity, common sense, and a way of treating people with respect.
Or in the shot put case, I think I said 5th graders, with junior high students taking the lead, where adults should be taking the lead, but the junior high students step forward on the shot put issue. I think that's just so telling to me. Like, young people know you can't trick young people all that easily as much as you can adults who equivocate on things.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point. So this will come out during Pride Month. We encourage people also to join us in D.C. if you can. Abby Johnson's having her conference for the celebration of Dobbs. We encourage you to register the Celebrate Life weekend. It's going to be awesome. Matt Walsh will be speaking at our dinner on Friday night, and then we'll have the rally at the Lincoln Memorial on Saturday, the 22nd. and of June. And so come out for that. The rally's free. Just show up at the Lincoln Memorial, and then Abby's conference will be that afternoon and Sunday. So make a whole weekend out of it. You see the link on the page. Also, be sure to pre-order your signed copy of What to Say When 2. It is unfortunately very much needed, and we appreciate all the encouragement and all the requests for a book like this. We first mentioned a sequel right after the first one came out. We're like, we don't have a sequel. We covered it all, and we didn't. So, and then things got even weirder, and we realized we didn't cover it all. So get a copy of What to Say When 2. You can also order the combo if you want to get the first one now and then the second one when it comes out on September the 10th. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Heather. Be sure to rate, review, and share this podcast, and we will see you next time. God bless you.